Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about one of the pedals which is always in my pedal board, and it's definitely one of my favorite ones as well. I've been using it for a few years now, so I think I know it quite well, and I'm talking about the VT Bass by Tech 21. So the VT Bass is part of Tech 21's Character series. What do they want to do? They basically want to emulate the voicings and the vibe of different amps, especially vintage ones. And to me, it's actually brilliant. It does things very well, and it's also very versatile. I'd like to approach this pedal, or I'd like to talk about this pedal in a way which is a bit different. So hopefully that's going to be useful and shed some light as well, clear some doubts in case you know the pedal and you don't quite get what it actually does, or you don't know the pedal and want to know more about that as well. So this one's the deluxe version of the pedal. It has 6 banks as well, and that's to me very useful. They were present when playing live, and given the pedal's versatility, you can have loads of sounds, loads of tones. So I'm not going to talk too much about what the actual deluxe does as opposed to the others. I'd like to talk about VT Bass in general. So what I think I'm going to say stands true for all the different kind of options you can actually get of this pedal, or rack mount as well, or head. The main controls are drive, so that controls the gain. Character, that's quite important, that controls the voicing of the tone. Then comes the EQ section here, low, mid and high, and level, that's to compensate the overall volume. So I said that I'd like to approach the pedal differently, and the reason is I like to talk about the drive and the character knob first, and the way they actually interact, leaving everything here flat. That's the way I probably prefer approaching this pedal, in fact. So the character is the key knob, or the key control for this kind of series. And as I said before, it sort of recreates different voicings, and that is the main way you can actually get tones from the VT Bass to me. I will shortly demonstrate what I'm talking about. And first of all, this is the sound bypassed. So that's actually going. That's pure DI. That's a pure tone of the bass going straight into the interface. The VT Bass is not working now. So I'm just going to engage the VT Bass now. You can clearly hear different straight away. So character knob. Character knob. So I'm going to start with the character all the way down, and that's what Tech 21 says sort of recreates the SVT vibe of a very hefty sound, nice mid-range scoop somehow. Now I'm just going to crank up the drive and compensate, of course, with the overall level till it starts breaking up. That's a really nice tone to me. That's what I love about this pedal, the way it actually sort of starts saturating without having any tube inside. It does get very warm by itself. And if you go, and now not even like at 12 o'clock with the drive, so just to demonstrate how much drive you actually have on top. If you push it further up, you get into sort of stoner territory. You get this kind of amp push to the limit kind of tone. So I'm just gonna take the drive back to a clean setting, so back it down again and push the character up to around 11ish, and what you get, just gonna compensate again. You do get a different kind of response in the mid-range. That's very evident, it's very clear. You, in fact, you are sweeping through the voicings of the actual pedal. You're sort of going to a kind of different amp. As I said before, it affects the way the drive works as well. If I push the drive up, further up again, as you can hear, the overdrive qualities are different. You get a different response in the mid-range, and it starts breaking up earlier as well. So you do get a different kind of voicing, and that's the key element of VT bass. If you have the character around, say, 12 o'clock, drive again into clean territory. You sort of get into, according to Tech 21, flick top territory, or Ampeg B15. It does have a way livelier response in the mids. Doesn't have that kind of big push that a SVT has, and again, it does break up differently as well. Do get a very lively mid-range here, and if you go past 12 o'clock or past midway on the character knob, that's where you start getting a bit wild. So you will definitely, even with a drive down, you'll definitely get a clanky sort of a rougher tone. Again, as I said before, that mid-range is actually affected by the character. So if we actually crank up the drive, we're getting this sort of very, very nasty distortion. We get this kind of very nasty distortion here. And what you probably, if you do agree with me, what you probably get is that the low end starts getting a bit thinner, and the mid-range and the high frequencies get a bit nastier and probably a bit out of control. So you might want to tame them down. You might want to tame them a bit. And that's where I think the EQ section here comes into play. So I think this one as a later stage compared to what happens here. It's a bit as the EQ on a channel straight on a mixer, or that's basically to compensate, to me, possible imbalances that the character can actually bring, or to further shape or fine-tune your tone. So as I said before, I'm going to tame down the mids and the highs and give a bit of boost in the low end here. definitely not thin anymore. So that's a very powerful active section here, active EQ that you have on tap. It can dramatically cut or boost your own frequencies as well. What's very important for Tech 21 products, and especially for the VT bass to me, is you don't have to EQ with your own eyes. This is a very versatile pedal. It can go into an interface like I'm doing now. It can go straight into the front of house for live show as a DI. It can go into the power amp of an amplifier and an actual cab, or act as a front end for an amplifier as well. So you basically use this one on top of a actual amplifier, and it's still going to work. But obviously you get different factors at play now, and they drastically affect the frequency response that you're going to have. So that's the reason why you might want to compensate either on the amp or here. And sometimes if you have like the mid, say, cranked up, or the low cranked up or cranked down, just to compensate, that's fine. What matters is what you actually hear, not what you see on the knob here, because what you're doing is to equalize an imbalance somewhere else, might be even in the room itself. So again, EQ, don't become fixated on the fact that it has to look right. So now I'm going to play something with a pick as well. And I'd also like to switch to flat one strings as well. So to sum it up, most of the settings I used with the EQ here were flat. So the only time when I actually used the EQ here was to show you how to compensate for the nasty overdrive effect that was having. It also has, which I didn't say before, and probably most of you actually know, it definitely has a sort of a speaker simulation thing going on here. So it sort of emulates the way the speaker sort of sounds or responds to frequencies. So when you have the overdrive effect or distortion, you don't get that sort of horrible mosquito-like fuzz, because those frequencies are actually rolled off. And you do also get, especially when you get into lower character settings to me, you get a sort of a nice round natural sort of compression that you get when you mic in an amp and you get the air moved. It is not a digital model of a particular cabinet happening to be mic'd. So there's no sort of mic option involved, no sort of different cabinets involved as well. So what it does is basically voice your tone as if it were going through a 8x10 fridge primarily. Again, it does so as well with a very even frequency response. So it doesn't. When you mic something, you might get the peaks and valleys, which are happening because you're just capturing with a particular mic in a particular setting, particular mic position as well. So what you get here is a more versatile response, which goes very well, especially if you have to use an actual cabinet. So as I said before, you might need to, or you probably will need to use the EQ section here to compensate, or on an amp, because you get so many variables as well happening, coming at play. But you will get a very usable and lively and present tone as well. Also, to conclude about why I really like this pedal and where I actually like it. First of all, I think that digital modeling has come a long way, and it's great nowadays. It's useful, but in actual live, especially loud settings or when rehearsing, playing live, I really like this pedal because it does have that kind of presence and punch. And the sound is, I mean, I feel like it's more alive. Mostly, I also like the way it actually breaks up. And it's very tube-like, and there's no tubes in here. But it does have this kind of natural, organic, warm response, and it's very, very responsive to dynamics as well. How hard you actually tap the notes or pluck the notes, it does affect the way it actually sounds and the way it breaks up in a way that, to me, digital modeling doesn't quite do in the same way. For this reason, to me, that might not be the best buy for people seeking for pure hi-fi, clean surgical tones. You might want to look elsewhere, like hi-fi solutions and offerings from Aguilar, for instance, Sadowski, EBS, Phil Jones Bass, different products do a different job. Tech 21 is very clear in saying that it does recreate a vintage vibe. So if that's not what you actually want to get from your own sound, it's probably best to look elsewhere.